The Toyota Land Cruiser is an off-road icon. Its history goes hand in hand with Toyota's history in America. And now it gets to make even more history as a big, luxe, hybrid, modern off-roader. But the big question is, can it live up to the hype?
This is the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, and I'm Atlantis King. The Land Cruiser is Toyota's big, beefy, body-on-frame off-roader, and this one costs 72,000 American dollars. Let's go for a drive, and stick around for the end of this video to get this Land Cruiser's full report card.
In America, the Land Cruiser is an OG. Toyota formed Toyota USA in late 1957, and American sales began in 1958. Do you know how many Toyotas they sold in America that year? 288. Yeah, just 288, not 288,000. 287 of those sales were Toyopet Crown sedans, and one, yes, one, was a Land Cruiser. Just as a fun comparison, Toyota North America reported sales of nearly 2.3 million vehicles in 2023. Only 7 of them were Land Cruisers, but that was an availability thing. They're selling a couple thousand a month now. The Land Cruiser was on the market for 60 years, but in late 2020, Toyota told Americans its reign was over on our shores. So what did we do? We freaked out, and we started buying Land Cruisers at much higher rates than before. But sometimes, death is temporary. The Land Cruiser returned to the US market for 2024 after a very brief time away, this time offering a hybrid powertrain only.
The Land Cruiser shares a platform with its Lexus sibling, the GX, as well as trucks like the Sequoia and the Toyota Tundra. And it also shares this with the GX, a really, really ugly rear hitch cover. Ugh. Anyway, the Land Cruiser's platform is body-on-frame, which means the frame sits here and the body sits on top. That allows this vehicle to be really flexible for off-roading compared to a unibody construction, which means the body and the frame are together, and they're not as flexible over those obstacles. With body on frame, you do have that off-road advantage, but on the road, you typically get a rougher highway ride, and it's not as fun to do on your daily commute. So if you're looking at a car like this for your family to go on trips and do stuff like that, body on frame is not always the best choice unless you plan to go on those trips and off-road. The modern American market Land Cruiser has one engine option. It is a 2.4-liter inline 4-cylinder turbocharged hybrid that makes 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. That power goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission to all 4 wheels, so that when you are off-roading, you get that oomph on every single wheel. You might be going, Atlantis, oh, what do you mean a 4-cylinder hybrid? The last Land Cruiser on the American market had a 5.7-liter V8 engine. And yes, you are technically correct about that, but that 5.7-liter V8 had 381 horsepower and 401 pound-feet of torque. So it had more horsepower but less torque than this engine right here. I feel like that kind of evens out. Where this car actually wins is in fuel economy. This car gets 23 miles per gallon combined, whereas the last Land Cruiser got 14. Now, there is a little disclaimer here. The last Land Cruiser took regular gasoline. This one takes premium. In the Land Cruiser, I have 8 easily accessible drive modes. 3 of those modes come in a dial that says Mode Select, and I can choose between Eco, Sport, and Normal. Then I have to go to a different area, a button that says MTS, to get to the other drive modes. MTS stands for Multi-Terrain Select, and that is where my off-road stuff comes in. So I do MTS, and I have Deep Snow, Mud, Sand, Dirt, and Auto for my off-road modes. And what that will do is configure your car based on what kind of traction you are going to have out there. Also in our drive mode select column, we have a button that says DAC crawl. Crawl stands for crawling and DAC stands for downhill assist control. This is basically low speed cruise control for off-roading. So it allows you to go downhill or anywhere else you need to go without having to modulate the pedals so you can focus on steering the car. If you want to customize your off-road driving modes, you have a little set of buttons right here. You can turn traction control off, and you can also do many other things like disconnecting the front stabilizer bar. So in a car, you would have a front stabilizer bar to keep yourself from swaying like this. But if you're in a situation where your wheels need to be in separate areas, you can disconnect that front stabilizer bar with that button and try to get both wheels where they're on the ground because you have a bunch of extra flexibility. You also have differential lockers. You have a center differential locker and a rear differential locker that allows you to send even amounts of torque to all the wheels that you're locking. With a rear differential locker, for example, you would split that 50-50 torque between your two rear wheels. A differential allows those wheels to move at different speeds, such as taking a turn. Your outside wheel is going to travel further than your inside wheel, so they need to go at different speeds. If you lock that differential, those wheels are going to move in lockstep, and that allows this car to be able to go over areas of low traction, like one wheel being off the ground, without hiccuping or just spinning one wheel that's in the air. You also have a couple of other modes, for high and for low, that you can toggle between depending on your traction situation. The Toyota Land Cruiser also has a driver attention monitor, which assesses how alert you are while going down the road. Like a lot of other modern cars, including the Silverado, that attention monitor is right here behind the steering wheel. Our partner Magna makes a very similar technology, but with a few differences.
While the system here is not produced by our YouTube partner, Magna does create a very similar driver monitoring system. Various locations within a vehicle can be leveraged for customized integration solutions, including center stack and behind the steering column like we see in the Land Cruiser. But they also have the capability of integrating in the A-pillar and rear view mirror. When focusing on the mirror integration, Magna's camera-based solution seamlessly integrates into the rearview mirror, behind the glass. The high-resolution camera, infrared filters, and ECU work with advanced software to detect the position of the head, eyes, and body and determine driver alertness. Moving the camera inside the rearview mirror provides an unobstructed view to the driver and an innovative, compact packaging that optimizes space within the vehicle. As an industry leader in both rearview mirror and interior-facing cameras, Magna is uniquely qualified to produce this tech for OEMs.
You might ask, why do you need driver monitoring systems? And that is a great question. It's because as technology, like driver assistance technology, gets better and better, you have cars that can keep their own lane for the most part and modulate the throttle and brakes for the most part. But you as the driver with modern technology still have to pay attention to the road. And it could be really easy if you have the car keeping its lane and doing the gas and brakes to look away, get a little distracted. These systems determine, oh, she's looking somewhere else, and they beep and tell you pay attention to the road or we're going to turn this off, which is the safest possible thing because you need to be paying attention to the road for the safety of yourself and everyone else. So next time you're in a modern car, look around, see if your driver attention monitor is behind the steering wheel or if you can't actually see it at all. And if you can't see it, it may be behind your rear view mirror. Huge thanks to Magna for partnering with this channel. We love being able to teach you about the technology in your cars, and Magna lets us do that. Thank you so much for watching. We're getting to the end of the calendar year, which means you will see a few reviews where we have a 2024 model from the fleet, but the only thing you can actually spec online is a 2025. And that is the case with this Land Cruiser. This is a 2024 Land Cruiser, but online you can only do 2025 and up. That just means there will be a little bit of discrepancy between the price of this vehicle and the price of the vehicle you can spec online, but they're close enough, it'll work.
For 2025, there are two versions of the Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser 1958, which starts at $56,450 American dollars, and the normal Land Cruiser, which starts at $62,450. The Land Cruiser 1958, whose name throws it back to Toyota's first sales year in America, gets the classic circular headlights that match the earliest Land Cruiser models. The normal Land Cruiser gets more modern rectangular headlights. The downside is that the throwback 1958 model only comes in 3 exterior colors: white, gray, and black. The normal Land Cruiser has all of those, plus the heritage blue on my loaner car, and a sandy color called trail dust.
This 2024 regular Land Cruiser starts at about $62,000, and it has a bunch of options, including these $1,200 20-inch alloy wheels, a $350 two-tone roof, a bunch of cargo and carpet mats, a $1,500 roof rack, and a $4,600 Land Cruiser premium package with a 14-speaker JBL audio system, digital key capability, a cool box in the center console, a digital rearview mirror, a power driver's seat with memory so it knows where you sit, a head-up display that shows the driver important information on the windshield, a bunch of extra driver assistance features, and more. That brings the total price of this vehicle to $71,809 American dollars, which is so much money. But honestly, if you're looking for an off-roader in this market segment and you want it to be new, you're probably not going to be too mad about spending $72,000. We have now made it to my favorite part of any car review, which is how many Atlantises can fit in this 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser's trunk. And I have a feeling the answer is gonna be a lot. This is so high up. Why is this so high up? Oh, wow. Okay, so one can sit right here. One can sit right there. I think this is a solid 6. I mean, we'd be kind of close, but if we were flexible. That's what I always say, because it's true. We have now moved temporarily out of the grass, so I can show you what is going on underneath this car, which is really, really important for off-roaders like the Land Cruiser. So we're gonna start on the side. We have this metal right above me, and then above that, we have a plastic covering on the step to get in the actual car. And this worries me because this is not a rock slider for off-roading, because you have this plastic on top. And if you're in a narrow situation where you have a rock that could potentially scrape, you're just gonna peel the plastic off the top of this. And that is not gonna be fun on your $72,000 Land Cruiser. You then move under the car and you have some panels on top of these underbody parts, and you have some underbody parts that don't have any panels at all. So we start up front, we have a metal panel up front, and then that turns into a plastic panel right there. And then we also have a metal panel over the gas tank back here. A lot of the rest of the stuff under here is left uncovered, including this center locking differential. So the transfer case splits the power between the front and the rear wheels. That is a very, very important part right there. And I feel like there's not a ton of protection on top of it. You also go to the differential in the rear, and that just has a differential case on it. And when you think about off-roading, the lowest parts of the car are the parts that are going to hit first. And that rear differential is very, very low. A couple more uncovered parts on here. We have the muffler right there. And then when we're looking at what we're gonna hit, what's really low, I'm looking at this cross member right here. So I feel like you're off-roading, you're gonna slam this cross member, and then you're gonna potentially slam that center diff. Ooh, that's scary. Welcome inside the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, where I did a little bit of minor off-roading in this car, but unfortunately, we have not gotten access to that off-roading land that we were gonna use. So we're gonna do mostly on-road driving impressions today. And you know what? I find that helpful because a lot of people are gonna off-road this car, and that's what a lot of reviews are gonna focus on. So if we can focus on-road driving impressions, hopefully that'll help you out. But we're gonna start with a few interior impressions. And I do really like the interior of this Land Cruiser. I like the brown leathers we got going on in here. All the surfaces are really nice and they feel good. They don't feel cheap or plasticky, which is awesome. The only real complaint you could have about this interior is that it's not quite as nice as the one in the Lexus GX, which I drove recently at an $85,000 price point. This is a $72,000 car, and the interior is more utilitarian. The wheel doesn't have any contrast stitching, there are no pretty metallics on it. There's just nothing in front of me that screams $72,000 car. It looks pretty utilitarian in front of me. Whereas in the Lexus GX, you have this massive panoramic glass roof that changes color with the tap of a button. And in here, you just have a tiny little moon roof with a slider that you slide yourself. So there are things you see in here where you're like, wow, I'm paying almost as much as that GX for not nearly as cool of an interior, and it makes you wonder. But this car does share a lot of interior aspects with the Lexus GX. One of those is that I have a center cool box. It's just this massive hole in the center console that you can cool off, which is sick. We get that from the Pontiac Aztec center cooler. But the issue is there isn't a lot of storage in the rest of the front passenger compartment. So the glove box is really small. You're not gonna fit much in there. And then if you're using this cool box as a cool box, you really don't have any storage up front. It is all at your feet, but hey, it's all right. Another thing that's an issue in this car and in the Lexus GX is that the driver instrument cluster is so dark. If you're in the passenger seat, it's basically just a black hole over here. Now in front of me, it's fine, I can see it, but when I think about screens, I think about how screens get less vibrant over time, and if this is already dark, I do worry in 15 years, how much darker is it going to be? Another thing it shares with the Lexus GX is that there's no sunglass holder up top. I don't think this was something I realized until a couple of weeks ago. Are automakers just not putting sunglass holders in cars anymore? I should know this, I drive cars all the time, but I've never really looked for it. But sometimes you may want it, and it's not there. I did take the Land Cruiser on a very long road trip, about 8 hours round trip. And it was great. I really did like it. It was pretty comfortable on the highway. Then again, I had my music blasting, so I didn't hear the road noise or the wind noise or anything like that. But it was quite comfortable on the highway. The only issue was at about hour 6, my back really started hurting. And I don't know if that's a my back thing or a car thing. My front seat passenger did not have the same issue, so I'm gonna chalk it up to maybe it was my back and not the car, but it's something to note if you get a chance to be in this car for a long time. See how it does with your back. I think it'll be fine. I think it was a me problem, but see how it does. I have 2 more notes about the interior of this car, and they are both climate related. The first is another problem I had in the Lexus GX, and it was that the lowest fan setting is not low enough. I am a person who likes to have the fans on, but just enough so that I know that air exists, right? You don't want completely dead air, but I also don't want air blasting on me at all. I don't want to feel a bunch of current in the air. There is not a setting for that in this car, and I don't understand. I don't think I've run into that with really any other cars. It will remember if you had the fans or the seat heaters on when you turn off the car and turn it back on again. And there have been times where I've gotten in this car with the seat heaters on because my back was hurting, and I didn't even know they were on because they might as well not be there. They are not warm at all. And you know, sometimes your back hurts or it's cold outside or you're having a long day and you just really want a seat heater. And there is not enough of a seat heater in this car, and that makes me sad. That brings us to driving impressions, and we can't talk about the driving impressions without first talking about the fact that you can see everywhere you're going in this car. This is a traditional off-roader where you have thin pillars around you and you have tons of glass. So I can see right up here, my fender. I can see over my hood because this hood actually tilts down instead of bulging up like a Tacoma TRD. I had one of those a couple years ago. The hood was massive. It was so hard to see over. But this hood, because it angles down, you have better sight lines, especially while you're off-roading. And you can just see so well in here. And that is really important for on-road driving and off-road driving. We discussed earlier that there are 3 driving modes in this car. So I put it in sport.
It's definitely not fast. It's fine, but it's definitely not fast, even in sport mode. It'll get you up to speed and it works. And this is not a car that you need to be fast, right? This is a car that you want to get over rocks in, but it is not going to blow anybody away. This car has lots of driver assistance features, and it has that driver attention warning that it monitors you with, which is great. I love all of those things. And the driver assistance in this car is awesome. When you put on lane keep assist and throttle control assist and braking assist, traffic assist basically, it does such a good job, especially in a vehicle that is so big. There are only a few times where I take a turn at like 70 because I'm on the highway and the car gets a little iffy. It gets a little behind because it's trying to follow those lines, but it doesn't give as big of an input. But that's why you're paying attention, and that's why your hand stays on the wheel, because when the car needs a little help, you just give it a little help and it goes. The other side of that is that I was off-roading and I had it in the MTS mode auto. Very minor off-roading. There's not a lot going on, right? Just take a couple of dips. And I went into a dip and it auto braked. And I'm like, why are you braking into the dip? You're in the multi-terrain setting mode. Like, what do you mean? What? And so it had brake that came across the screen. It was like, brake! And I was like, you're braking. I wasn't gonna brake that hard, but you're braking. And so I kind of had to coax it out of the braking situation and like get it to let me give it gas again so I could get out of the dip. It was a little odd. I will say, even if I did have a place to hardcore off-road this car right now, not just the light stuff I did on it, I would hesitate to do anything hardcore with this car in stock form. I think there are just too many protruding pieces that are not super strong. Plastic bits, like the rear hitch cover, like these steps on the side of the car. There's just stuff that protrudes underneath the car and on the outside of the car that I wouldn't want to hit and mess up. And I do think it needs bash plates in the front, bash plates in the back that are super strong. It needs more skid plate protection underneath. It needs more side protection as well. Like, it needs those more hardcore rock sliders that you see on off-roaders. And I get that these pieces on this car, if you're gonna off-road it, are meant to be taken off, and you're supposed to put aftermarket hardcore plates on here to protect the car. But because that's not on here right now, there's, in my opinion, just not quite enough protection to do hardcore stuff with this car. I think you can put those bash plates and stuff on, because if the idea is for people to have an off-roader, I feel like they should be comfortable taking that car off-road. And I just currently am not going to do anything super wild. I'm not just gonna go to Moab and take the wildest rock formations I can possibly find, because I'd be worried that I would just peel all of this plastic off of every side of the car. And I would also be worried about those bits underneath that don't have that skid plate protection. I just don't want to tear it up. But overall, this is a really, really cool car. And I think Toyota, to the best of its ability, has made this a hardcore off-roader that is not uncomfortable to drive long distances on the road, which can be really difficult when you're working with a body-on-frame, massive SUV. And Toyota's done that, and I enjoy being in this car. I like the way it looks. I like the way it drives. I really like everything about it. And I'm just glad that we can have these legacy nameplates that do really, really cool things, like a Land Cruiser, and we get to take them out and do those cool things. This nameplate is being used for what it's famous for, and that is the coolest possible way to use it. Now that we've driven the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, it's time to give it a grade. Welcome to Atlantis' report card. The exterior on this car, I'm giving an A-. It looked pretty good. I like it. Really, the only points we can take away
Or that tow hitch in the back. What is going on back there? Interior also gets an A-. I really like this car and the space you have inside of it. There are just a couple of places where I wish it felt fancier. The performance, I'm gonna give a B+. Body-on-frame vehicles are not ideal for highway driving and normal commutes, and I do believe this has the makings of an amazing off-roader. But there are a couple of issues with the exterior of the car if you don't get aftermarket off-roading parts on there, and that is, you're gonna beat the thing up. Would I take this car on a road trip? Yes, I did. And the lane keep assist and also the throttle and braking assist was absolutely amazing. It turns an 8-hour round trip of driving into what feels like maybe 2 hours of work. Absolutely amazing. Value? I'm giving it a C. You are not buying this car because you are looking for a deal. This is a $72,000 off-roading Toyota. You're spending what you're spending. And overall, I give this car a B+. There are some areas where it could really improve, but I do love it.
In stock form, the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser isn't the perfect off-roader. It's got the guts, it's got the hardware, it's got the software, but the car I drove felt like a turtle without a shell. I couldn't fully test those guts because they felt exposed, soft, unprotected. I can't wait to see what owners do with their Land Cruisers to get them ready for the trails. But I also wish the car came more ready.
For a brief moment, Toyota took the Land Cruiser away from Americans, and we all kind of freaked out about it. But the Land Cruiser is back now with a long history behind it and hopefully an uninterrupted future ahead.